Okay, good evening, everybody. We're at the regular council meeting. We're usually on Tuesday, but we had reason to change it for tonight. We'll call the meeting to order, and there's an agenda. Does anybody have anything to add? If not, we need a motion to approve. Moved by Guy, seconded by Deputy Warden, moved by Councillor Surratt and Deputy Warden. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Any conflict of interest declaration, and if you don't want to do it now, you can always do it when we reach the item if you feel that you have a conflict. But if you have anything, you can declare it now as well. Hearing none, we'll move on. The next one is the adoption of minutes. We have the Committee of the Whole and Grants to Organization meeting minutes of April the 27th. We need a motion to approve. Moved by Deputy Warden Albright, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried.
Mr. Warden, Mr. Warden.
Yes.
Mr. Warden, Mr. Chair, there was on the minutes.
Yes.
I raised my hand, but you thought I was voting, but
oh,
there was
sorry.
a question on the minutes.
Yes.
And it's on page 3. It says Glenn Digdon was, Glenn Digdon was speaking, and it says churches that are not part of a church.
Okay,
in the minutes.
Churches that are not part of
So maybe I'm missing something.
Or yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe Ailey can look at that. It's just before the motion was done on page 3.
Okay. So Ailey can look at that, and if it needs to be corrected, we can move on, I guess.
Yep. Thank you.
Business arising. I don't see any business arising from the minutes, but then number 6, I don't know if that was supposed to be a bit from the business arising, but it's the approval of the fire budget. You've all seen the budget for all the fire departments, and all these have been discussed with every fire department, I assume. So if they have, are there any questions on it? Or any explanation that you want? Councillor Sonia, did you have your hand up? You're muted, please.
Thank you. It's not for the fire budget, but for business arising from the minutes, I was just wanted to talk a little bit on the cemetery and the grants for cemeteries and stuff.
Okay, is that on the, I think that is on the, I think it's on there because we're going to be discussing, discussing grants to organization. And I think it was added on there.
I think so too. Now you mentioned
you can, if not, you can bring it up then and discuss it if you do, if it's okay with you.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's there. And how it's going to be done.
Okay.
So are there any questions on the fire department budget? If there isn't, we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Bork. Go ahead, CAO.
Just 2 items I want to raise just so that you're aware of how we're going to deal with it. As you know, we've had some issues with the insurance and the spike in the premium. So what this budget has is it's going to deal with the increase in 2 ways. The first way is about 15% is going to be passed on to the fire departments themselves because it's their responsibility. The remainder, which is about $24,000, and you'll see a line item in there, 24,000 and change, That represents the increase in premiums that can directly be correlated to the accident of Brook. And so the staff did not believe that that should be billed to every unit. So rather than, ultimately we pay for their operations. But in this instance, we didn't want to bill it across. We wanted to pay it inside our budget and transfer some of the cost over to them because it represents what I would consider a normal increase in insurance. So you'll see a 6% increase in their budget. That's about double what they typically get. And as well, the 24,000 has its own separate line. I just want to make that very clear before you make a motion that that is what you're passing.
Okay. So the full amount is not shown on that then, of the insurance?
No, the full amount is approximately $121,000.
Well, that's what I thought, and when I saw that, I didn't think it was that high, because I remember it being considerably higher than what I saw there, but okay.
It's a big number, but the coverage is comprehensive. Like, so for instance, if we had had different coverage, I'm not sure that Brook would have gotten full recovery of that vehicle, right?
Exactly.
So if you can, so it's like, it's expensive, but it's also a heavy coverage. So we're taking it seriously. We're taking the increase seriously, but we're also not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as the expression goes, because, there's very few insurance companies that actually insure municipalities and fire departments. Apparently we're not a very good customer. So for a variety of reasons, not necessarily reasons we've created on our own. So so it's for that reason. Yeah, so the 24 represents only the extra that relates to the Brook accident. Their typical premium was in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Last year would have been 84, 86 or something like that. And now it's 121.
Right. Okay.
Right, Marcia?
Okay, so we've had a motion. There's been a mover and a seconder. So any discussion on that? If not, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. The next one is the approval of the utility budgets. And again, all these, every area has had their meetings, and these are all approved by the communities. I would say, I think I'm correct in saying that. So we have the Tusket sewer charge, and that's going up by $10 from, going up to 285 from 275, and the capital fee per equivalent unit will be 217.38. So there's a motion. The motion says, move that council establish an operating rate of 285 per equivalent unit and the capital rate of 217.38 per equivalent unit for the Tusket sewer charge for the 2021-22 fiscal year.
So move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by Deputy Warden. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. The next one is the West Pubnico sewer charge. And that one there, an increase of $10 as well. And the motion is that council establish an operating rate of 300 per equivalent unit and capital rate of 211 per equivalent unit for the West Pubnico sewer charge for the 2021-22 fiscal year. Need a motion for that.
I'll move that.
Councillor Dontremo, seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor, signify by raising.
I've got a question first.
You have a question? Go ahead.
For CEO Muse. So the capital, the 211, we're, just so people know, we're in what year are we in now?
This year is year 9 of 10. Is that correct, Marcia? It's 8 of 10? 9 of 10?
9 of 11, maybe?
11 of
Yeah.
12.
Oh.
Is it?
Good try.
No,
It says right
it's not
there in
11
the-
of 12. Is it?
is.
Okay. Well, I was going to say this year and one more year. How's that?
Yeah.
Would have been an accurate way of saying it.
You were semi right.
Yeah.
It's 11 of 12.
Okay.
So this year,
So-
another year, then that will
Then it's
be
gone.
paid off.
Yeah, then it's gone.
Great.
And that's a capital.
Yes.
That was for the new counselors. That was when we did a treatment plant, complete treatment plant upgrade. It was $4.5 million project. And we got a bunch of money to pay for it, but a section of that was paid for by the resident. And I believe their fee was $2,500. And you could either pay it all at once or over 12 years at $211 a year. So that's the story.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion there. Yeah, anybody else? There's a motion there. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded? Carried. Next one is the East Pubnico Water Utility Charge, and that one is proposed motion, Beat move that council establish the following rates in the East Pubnico Water Utility. Middle East Pubnico, 3,405.31 plus 361 per 1,000 imperial gallons. Second is Lower East Pubnico, 632.78 for a 1.5 inch pipe plus 213 per imperial gallon. And number three is Lower East Pubnico, 1,011.86 for a 2-inch pipe plus $2.13 per imperial gallon. So we need a motion. Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Dochemal. Any questions or discussion on that one? If not, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. And the next one is the Wedgeport sewer operating. And that one is Beat move that council establish an operating rate of $145 per equivalent unit and the capital rate at $550.98 per equivalent unit for the Wedgeport sewer charge for the 2021-2022 fiscal year. Can we have a motion? Moved by Councillor Boudreau, seconded by Councillor Saunier.
Hold
And
on,
you
hold
have a
on.
question,
I got a question, yeah. What are those charges? Can Alec, can you help me out there? What are those charges for?
oh,
What? Go ahead.
The 145?
Yeah, so the 145 is charged to the sewer, those that participated in our sewer program.
Yeah,
So that's the
that's
annual.
for maintenance?
Yes, so it's
Okay.
maintenance, repair, cleaning, septic removal if it's required.
Yeah.
We've managed to have a surplus each year on that, which is why the rate keeps coming down every year.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have to clean every tank every year, as you know, but some of them we have to maintain fairly closely because they're specific, like they have specific needs.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're responsible for all that.
I just want to be clear.
Yep.
Okay,
The capital portion would be the portion that that the people who decided not to pay their $4,500 all at once. So they were charged, the residents that were on the program were charged $4,500 for a $20,000 job. And some of them decided to pay over a 10-year period. So that's the fee that they'll pay each year.
okay, great, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
okay. Anybody else? If not, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Number 8 is the resolutions, and most of these are for the area rates. And again, even though they're all in a certain year of their already agreed contracts, but we have to do these every year anyway and approve them. So the first one is an interest rate, and that's and a date for overdue accounts. And what it is, it's to raise the interest rate from $10 or 10%, sorry, 10% to 13% on overdue accounts. So is there any question or is, okay, Councillor Surratt?
This goes to the CAO. Anna, is there a specific reason why we're going up to 13? I mean, maybe we were 16% one time for all if I remember right. Is there a reason you're going with the COVID-19 pandemic and everything on the go? Just wondering, but specific reason. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. I expected the question, and I think it's reasonable. I think that the logic behind going from 10 to 13 is we still are trying to strike a balance between people being motivated to pay our bill versus others, which is why we're proposing a 3% increase from last year. If you, as you know, we went from 16 to 10 because we figured that COVID would have a dramatic negative impact on the residents, but that has not been our experience. Our experience has been that people have been paying the taxes. You know, there didn't seem to be any significant negative impact due to COVID, which is why we're proposing an increase this year. I think that in the long term, I'd like to stay at 13 because I think 16 is a little high in this interest environment. So it would be honestly to bring it back to a number where I think it might be reasonable for years to come, rather than go back to 16%. Obviously, the decision is yours as a council, and so you can make a different decision or make a different motion. And but what will happen, of course, is there'll be an impact on the budget, and we can talk about that. I mean, it's not a major impact, but it would be enough to change a couple of numbers around.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Dignan.
Thank you. First of all, my apologies for being late this evening,
Okay.
the start of the meeting, and just wondering how much of an impact it would have on the budget as far as that extra 3%, according to what you're seeing with the numbers coming in.
Pull that information for you. Just give me 1 minute. So last year we had it at 10% and it generated revenues of 43,000, and we're budgeting 54. So the increase of 3% would be the difference, about 11,000. So give or take. So I think that it might be more than that, and that we've conservatively budgeted, but it's at a very minimum about 11,000 in extra revenue that we're expecting that 3% would generate.
Okay.
So not a huge amount, right?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson. Unmute, please. Unmute, please. Councillor Donaldson, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Can you
There you
hear
go.
me now?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah,
you
we
now.
went through this years ago, and the problem was, Alan mentioned it right at first, a lot of people were paying other bills other than their taxes when the interest rate was low. So this is an incentive to pay your taxes before the interest rates start getting too high, or your interest bill becomes too high. So that's the reason why property taxes are generally have a higher interest rate than, well, anything else but credit cards, I guess. So I'm willing to make the motion that we accept this rate of 13%.
Okay, and also on the motion that the due date be July 30th.
Yeah.
As well. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's
I'm making a motion
it's
to the
moved.
proposed motion.
Okay, A seconder. Seconded by Deputy Warden. Any other discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded? Okay, do you want that recorded, Councillor Surratt? No? Okay. Motion carried. The East Pubnico area rate, it's year 2 of 6, 5 cents per 100. We need a motion to approve. Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor Donchemo. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Brook. Brook is at 12.5 cents per 100, and this is year 3 of 5. Motion moved by Councillor Albright, or moved by Deputy Warden Albright and seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. Island and District. Island and District is year 5 of 5 at 7 cents per 100. Moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by Deputy Warden. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Kemptville Fire Department. Their rate is at 3 cents and it's year 3 of 6. Motion moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Deputy Warden. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. Lake Vaughn. Lake Vaughn is 5 cents and it's year 6 of 10. Motion moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. Quinan and District, theirs is at 10 cents per 100 and it's year 3 of 12. Moved by Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Bork. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. West Pubnico. West Pubnico is 9 cents per 100 and it's year 1 of 1. Moved by Councillor Digdon, seconded by Councillor Donchemo. All in favor? Contrary minded? Carried. Wedgeport. Wedgeport is 7 cents per 100 and it's year 12 of 15. Motion moved by Councillor Boudreau, seconded by Councillor Surratt. All in favor? Contrary minded, carried. Next one is a FCM application, and it's a resolution, and it's money that it's grants that we can have for the asset management program. So this will, if we were to get that, it would still cost the municipality of Argyle. We have to commit 24,500 of the budget towards the cost of this initiative. Any discussion? Maybe our CEO can explain.
Sure. So as you're aware, we have some policies that we put in place. Well, maybe not all are aware because it was before the last election. We put together a policy on asset management and how we make decisions around prioritizing capital projects. So that work is not completed. The FCM has a funding program of $50,000 that helps municipalities like us bring in the appropriate expertise to set it up. So it's a one and done situation where they set you up with the asset management model, and then you carry out the model. So there are a multitude of firms that do this, and so we've reached out to a couple, and they've one in particular has given us a price that they figure they can do the work for about 74, and the work will not occur unless we get the FCM funding. So we will not be out 74, we'll be out 24, and it's well worth that, obviously, because it's actually worth 74 on the market. So so this has been included as a bit of a late item on this agenda, but it's also in your capital budget. So we'll get two cracks at this. So the one here is if you want us to proceed with the application itself requires this resolution to be passed. And then the second piece will be, you can see the impact on the capital budget. So when you approve the capital budget, you're actually approving the amount.
Any questions? Can we have a motion to approve this resolution? Moved by Councillor Bork, seconded. Councillor Donaldson. Any other discussion on it? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. The next one's the capital budget presentation. And for that, CAO, you're on.
Yeah, I love it. Oh, Guy. Councillor Surratt, I love it. This is why Marcia is going to be helping, because she's probably 12.5% more interesting than I am, at the very least. So she'd probably say it was 40, but you know. Anyway, so I think Glenn agrees entirely. So so this is the capital budget piece. So I'll do the presentation, which I'll go very quickly through because you've had some discussion of this already. And perhaps the best way to do this is to share the screen, which I will do if I can get my. I'm going to shine a light on the capital budget. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Okay. There. Here we go. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes, I can.
So that's just the first page. So let's just go to the second one here. There. Okay. There's a better way to do this. Okay. So these are the highlights of the budget. So at the end of the day, we're looking at approximately $3.8 million that we're going to be spending this year. So that sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But a lot of it is things that you're expecting or have expected for a while. So the biggest part, what we do with capital budget, we separate it with, we separate it by federal gas tax, as well as what I call regular capital reserve. Okay, so gas tax we can only spend on certain projects, and that number one. And number two, we get about $342,000 a year that pays for some of these projects. So at the beginning of the year, we had about 1.7 in the bank, but we're about to really kick in and spend it. So the other good news is that this year coming, the year of the budget that I'm presenting to you, we got a doubling of our gas tax. So instead of 342, we're getting 7 something, or 6, I guess 691, I think it is. The math is correct. So that's good news. So there are some big expenses that we're expecting this year. The final solar project of our Comfit program will be installed this year in East Pubnico. That was changed from Wedgeport to East. That'll cost about $275,000. West Pubnico dewatering is going to finish this year. as well as the, yeah, so that'll be done this year. And then the rural broadband and aquatic investments that are listed here that will be paid for by gas tax are 350,000 and 80,000 respectively. The rural broadband, if you remember, you've committed just shy of $700,000 to that project. So we're expecting about half of it this year and the rest in the next fiscal, but it could actually be less or more than that number. It'll depend on where Bell is in their contract, and they don't really care where our fiscal year end lands, I don't think. So it could be a little bit more than that this year, but we have the money committed and the money is in the bank account. So when it gets dispersed is the only variable. So, and then there's 420 of that that'll be applied to the admin building project. So we have about 1.4 minimum that we're going to apply to the project. We will apply some in the previous year that we just had, and we will be applying another amount here as well. So the 402 includes the road work of J.E. Hatfield Court. Okay. So it's basically 300 that's going towards the admin building and 102 towards the road. Bless you. So the other capital investments are 2.5, of which most of which is really not our money at all. About 1.04 million is the Wedgeport project. So that's phase 2 of the project you just passed the fees on. So we have just shy of our 50 that set up to have septic systems replaced. So that's really good news. That'll happen in the summer, fall, hopefully. With COVID, you never can tell for sure. We've had a couple of delays on this project because every time the engineers were set to come down, COVID phases came in. So it was just bad timing. So, and here we are again, right? So we are expecting the final cost of the admin building to come in, and we're expecting about 850. It's probably going to be lower than that because I'm expecting the number to be lower than the total budget. The final cost of the well restoration project, we are expecting, we've put this in the budget for 3 years in a row, the $100,000 contribution to the Eelbrook fire. That would be one of two. So, you know, each year we expect that we're going to disperse, but we're not dispersing until the project is approved. So, so that's the delay. Some of your decisions are included in this budget. Ground search and rescue, splash park, like your more recent decisions are included here. And paving at Camoes Hill, outdoor beach volleyball court at Glenwood Park is included here. There's also a revenue component associated with that project. So it won't cost us 37. In fact, 37 is about 10 high. I'm expecting the net cost to be about 20, maybe a little bit more. So, but we'll see. And then fire safety and drought at 95,000. So that hasn't been earmarked for a particular project, but we're setting the money there because we're expecting to deal with drought related issues, and we're expecting to continue our work on the fire holes or the fire dry hydrant fire ponds. So the work we're probably going to work on less of them, and some of them we're going to let go as fire ponds because they're private property and we're not necessarily welcome to use them for that purpose.
Can I ask a question on one thing before you keep going? The Wedgeport project, that's already been carried over, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens for any reason if it wasn't completed this year, or is this year up to the fiscal year, like of March?
It's up to the fiscal year of March, and if we saw that there would be a problem, obviously I would expect some leeway on funding. I don't think funding would just drop off the edge of the earth
Okay.
because of COVID.
Okay.
So, I fully expect the work to be completed this summer, fall.
Good.
So, but in the unlikely event that we're having some COVID difficulties, we would contact our funders, and I'd be confident that could be pushed into the next fiscal year.
Okay, good. That was just my question there.
Yeah, no, it's
think-
an excellent question.
Yeah.
Now I say that without having the proper conversation with our funders, but I just, based
Yeah.
on experience, I think they would be accommodating. So this is just a worksheet highlighting the admin building activity coming into this year, just highlighting some of the revenues. That it doesn't highlight all the revenues, it only highlights the revenues that are going to come in this year or recently. So what will happen is we're going to take an approach where we'll pay for some of the capital using gas tax right away and using some of our capital reserve, and then we're borrowing $3 million. So because we've already spent a section of that, it's going to replenish a lot of the bank account for the admin building. And the plan would be that the federal gas taxes would be claimed each year as part of a payment on debt. So we're not going to just claim it all at once on the project. We're going to claim it as we're making the payments on the project. Okay. And those payments will come from two places. It'll come from our capital reserve and it'll come from the gas tax. So it'll come from gas tax until we reach 1.4, and then the rest will come from capital reserve, if that makes any sense. We always said we had the money for it, and we do. And the reason why we borrowed was twofold. One was that we have a grant associated with this borrowing. It's not just borrowing. So we have $452,000 of like cash that we keep. So that's the best interest rate ever. You know, so, and then the other one is the fact that there's a very good interest rate on the loan. So all things settling in, it was the right thing to do financially. We are still expecting to move in by the end of June of 2021. How many of us will move in? Well, I hope all of us. I hope will allow us all there. Right? So these are the projects that are expected to be completed this year. So this is about, you know, finishing the project. So as you see, there are 9. That doesn't mean that it's all inclusive. These are the larger ones. So Wedgeport wastewater, that's the one that I'm really that's the one that hopefully doesn't get extended in the next year, but I'm confident that we'll get it done this year. The former Ymca retrofits, as you know, September is the deadline to open. So if we don't have those done, we're not opening. So I'm confident we'll get those done. Again, that would be a contribution that you'd have to consider. You're not actually doing the work yourself. Admin building, solar panel installation, East Pubnico water, West Pubnico dewatering. And so the last 3 is the Wedgeport outdoor court. We're hoping to have that by fall. We'll see. September might be aggressive. Como's Hill Wharf, we have confirmed that they'll be in June, July. And Red Cat pump station sewer improvements, we're expecting to finish that by fall, barring any kind of unknowns. That one, we're still in a planning mode. So sometimes plans and guesses before your plans are done look differently. So that one, I still expect it to be finished this fiscal, but it may run into winter, I'm hoping. And these are the projects that are underway or ongoing. Some of these are multi-year projects, so they stay. And the rural broadband, I expect next year, it'll be 2 years worth of money, and then it'll be done. Like for good. And last is the projects not included in this funding this year. That does not mean we won't do them eventually. It's kind of highlighting the things that we're not doing this year. And most of the reason why we're not doing it is because it's funding dependent. So what I like to say is this is the list of the projects we did not include, but if there was an opportunity to fund them, we'd have the conversation. We would apply for funding. We wouldn't just say, well, it's not in the budget this year. We always follow, if we have opportunities for somebody else to pay our projects, we follow that road. And this is just a very quick projection of where our cash balances are and will be at the end of the year. So our capital fund is low at 1.5 right now. That's low for capital fund typically, but we're dispersing. We're at the tail end of dispersing for the admin building. Once we get the loan of $3 million, that will come back up to a more reasonable number. And federal gas tax fund, I expect that fund to be in the $500,000 to $700,000 range for the next 3 years. Unless we, of course, pick up more gas tax or pick up more projects. And that's the end of the presentation.
Are there any questions? I don't see everybody, so. Councillor Surratt.
Just a comment, I'll add that I know I tease you a bit, but you know what? That was really well done. I tell you, it was easy to follow.
Hmm.
I don't know about the other councillors, but it was the way you set up this year, it was better than the years before, maybe because it was different, maybe the colors or what it is, but but it was easy to follow, and I thank you.
You're welcome. This is the second year that we present it this way. And I even use the same colors because I think you said the same thing last year. You like colors. I appreciate that because it's hard to look at 85,000 numbers. I realize that. So the budget is on the back and all the details are on the back. And I'm happy to go through any of those details, but I'd rather present it this way for sure. Thank you.
And that was good. Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
I'm not muted now.
Oh,
Question for LN. I've had a couple conversations lately with some of my constituents and trying to explain the gas tax, how it relates to the tax rate. And of course, I remember before we had gas tax. So if we didn't have the gas tax coming in, what'd you say, $350,000 roughly, I told them basically we're looking at like it would be a 8 to 10 cent increase in our taxes if we hadn't received that gas tax back, started receiving that a few years ago. By now we would have had to put the rate up at least 8-10 cents. Was that a fair answer I gave them? Yeah,
if you strictly look at the numbers, it's 7 cents approximately. But there was a time where it was 8. So it's about 7 cents. But I think what I would say is equally as important as saying that that's what it would have taken to do that work. The other side of the coin is you may not have done that work, right? So that's the other part. Like there are certain opportunities that you had on solar, wind, energy, all those things were paid for by gas tax. So right now, I think your sales of services for wind and solar are about $75,000 a year. So that's revenue that you would not have had you not invested in that using your gas tax. Now, could you have used your capital reserves to do that? Yes, that could have been something that you would have chosen to do. But what the gas tax allows you to do is to do more, right? So it isn't just about the taxes that you would have otherwise been charged. It's also, and we did this, and we did that, and we did this. And I'm happy to send you, each year we show what projects we do with our gas taxes, and it always keeps a 5-year summary of that. It's called the annual expenditure report, and us nerds, send it to the province, and and it's audited and all that. But if ever you wanted to see that and distribute that, it's public information. I'm happy to share it. It's a little technical, but it does show where our money has gone over the past 5 years, and we can go back further. We can actually go back to the beginning.
anybody else? Councillor Bork.
Yeah, on the list that's not included in the funding, the East Pomego water tank, I'm always coming back at that. That hasn't been finalized about the water tank. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that there's still an assessment to do on the water tank before we can decide what we can do with the water tank. I think they're expecting to be an extra life expectancy for the water tank. So I just want to make sure that everybody, the constituents that are complaining about what it looks like. So I guess we have to figure out what they can do with it first.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. That's an accurate assessment. we are supposed to have a guy or a group of people. I shouldn't say guy. They could be guys and girls, and I don't know. It's a firm. How's that? From New Brunswick, come in and do the assessment. And again, because of the closure of borders, you know, all the best laid plans didn't work out the way that we hoped. There's no question. I think we all agreed that it does not look very nice. I think however, the first step is assessment, the second step is repair, and the last step is cosmetic. And I think people appreciate what that is, and even if it means kind of looking at something a little unsightly, the good news is that we're probably going to get a solid 30 plus years out of that tank, and the major user of that tank likes the size, and a lot of the costs associated with replacement would have significantly reduced the size of that tank. So we're cautiously optimistic, and we are going to be applying for third-party funds, and we do have funds still from the original grant that we received when we received that asset. So that's earmarked for that project.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on. Now we're going to the approval of the capital budget. And that's going into the figures.
So Mr. Warden, I will share the screen, but I won't present because I feel like I already have done that. If people have questions,
Okay.
I will share the screen so that they can see the details. It's about as attractive as feet. I did color it nicely, but that's just it's just to make it look nicer than it is. Let me just share the screen here. So this is the capital budget. And I'll just say quickly that it includes like last year's 2 years actuals, and then last year's budget, and then the actual. And then these colors represent the new budget for the year.
Can you fat it up a bit?
I can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So again, I'm not going to present in detail. I just will say that if you see gas tax budget and capital budget, I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom. So the numbers that you would have seen in our presentation, give or take a couple of $1,000s, are those two numbers there. Those are your totals. And so basically, and I'm just going to go up again and show you that we're expecting to spend 1.329 of your federal gas tax funds in the next 12 months. Keep in mind, you started at 1.7 and you're going to get 600. So 1.7 plus 6, that would be what, 2.3 minus 1.3 should leave you approximately $1 million, give or take. I probably did the math wrong. I think conservatively we said 700.
Does anybody have any questions on the document? Like
Would
I
a
said,
motion be appropriate now to approve this budget?
Certainly.
I so move that we approve the capital budget.
okay, it's moved by Councillor Donaldson,
I'll second it.
seconded by Councillor Bork. Any discussion on the motion and on the budget itself? I don't see everybody, but if you have a question, just speak up. Well,
Question,
yes, question.
question being called.
Oh, question being called. Thought you had a question. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question.
You have a question on the budget, Councillor?
The Mariner Center infrastructure improvements, is that the main street?
No. So there's two items here. So there's one, there's the where is it here? I'm trying to find it. So there's an amount here that I've put in. There's two amounts I should raise here. Okay, so this one here, the 45,000. I don't know that they'll do this or not, but they're contemplating a potential roof repair, significant roof repair to the existing Mariner Center. Our agreement states that we are not responsible for capital projects, but we might be if we might participate if we're being asked by the town and municipality. I'm actually not sure if this is going to happen in the next 12 months. I included it in the budget to make sure that the budget included the potential of you spending that money without having to go through a bunch of hoops to approve it. This doesn't mean you have to do it. It doesn't mean that you have to spend that much, in fact. But my anticipated cost is about $135,000, $140,000 for that project. And I'm not convinced they're going to do it this year. So that's a contingency amount. The second one is the Aquatics, which I'm just going to scroll down here. Or where is it? Right. So it's in two elements. So this is the former YMCA retrofit. So you're going to have at your disposal the Mariners on Main presentation that will be presented later in this agenda. This budget contemplates a $145,000 investment, and that's making an assumption that you will be positively supporting this, and that would be approximately 31% of the total. So, which would be our approximate percentage that has not been confirmed. Keeping in mind that the 450,000 that they've set up as a potential cost, there are contingencies built into that. So the cost could be less and the percentage could be slightly different. So this is my best effort at a number. And you'll see that it's in two sections, one for 65 and one for 80. And basically what I'm saying is the capital improvements to the building are gas tax eligible, but your setup costs for COVID or other costs that are not capital are not eligible for gas tax. So I'm contemplating a blended contribution, some from gas tax, some from your direct capital reserve.
So I was kind of saving the question for later on while we discussed the pool downtown. But since it's on the budget here, my question was, I guess to follow up to this was, there will be or possibly will be some unforeseen cost when it comes to the YMCA building, and as the Mariner Center is going forward, are we going to have overlapping cost or funds or financing? Are we going to be financing both places at the same time? Is what I'm saying. Is there going to be operational costs that we might have to cover that we don't foresee right now?
So I presume in your question you're referring to the Mariner Center expansion and the YMCA Aquatics.
Correct.
Okay, good. So in the next 12 months, there won't be any cost that would refer to the Mariner Center expansion would not be operational, with the exception of perhaps engaging a consultant to do an application for funding. We're simply not there. So there will be some money potentially spent in that area. So that amount is unknown. It won't be significant, I don't think, unless we, of course, get word that we got the funding, and then at that point, we start to spend a little bit more on professional fees, etc. We know that the Mariner Center expansion, even if we started it today, is unlikely to be open for 4 to 5 years. So the YMCA funds here, the 145,000 in capital, anticipates a 5-year life. So it's possible that it won't need 5 years, but it's also possible it could be 6 or 7, really. There will not be a duplicate of operations this year, but it's possible that in the future that you're actually picking up some operating costs of the Mariners of a Mariner Center expansion and also operating in the old. There will be a year where there's a transition in and some costs. We're not going to run 2 facilities at the same time, but you know how it works, right? You don't necessarily close one before the first one is fully opened. And so there may be some crossover there, but it's not anything that I would be overly concerned with right now.
Okay, you've answered my question perfectly. I guess that's exactly what I was thinking, and I got the answer that I expected. So thank you.
So anyway, question is called, unless anybody else has something. I'm going to ask for all in favor, signify by raising your hand or there.
Sorry.
Contrary minded. Carried. Another presentation, the operating budget. And operating budget right here. So who's taking that one?
You were going to start on that, were you going to?
Yeah, so we'll start with the detail, but we're not going to go line by line. We're going to focus on the areas that we feel that you need to look at it a second time, or that you need to look at again. For those
Right.
people just chiming in this meeting, this is not the first meeting that you've seen the operating budget. So there have been some changes to the budget based on some instruction that council gave us. And then subsequently, of course, we're always looking at it. So sometimes we find things that go up or down. And so we can talk about those. So Marcia and I have agreed to take our turns presenting some of these details. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to first share the screen, and I'll make it bigger before Guy asks, Councillor Surratt asks. And we're probably going to have to do these a little differently, where they come in big, so we don't have to, nobody has to ask. So, all right, I'm just, forgive the scrolling here. Those are all revenues. So I'm actually going to start under grants to organizations, and I'm hopeful that you can see this. Or did I even share the screen yet?
No.
Oh, well, that's helpful. Well, at least you didn't see me scrolling all over the place. So this is just to compare last year's budget, last year's actual, and this year's projected budget. So the blue is last year's budget. The white is the current actual, like at the end of March 21. And the, I guess, purple or magenta or whatever that would be, the one furthest to the right is the current budget proposed. So what you'll see is the grants to organizations are pretty much, they're the same mostly every year. They just get divided in different places, but at the end of the day, it's what you budgeted last year and what you budgeted this year are the same. The community hall grants project, as you'll see, was at 10,000 last year, and you've asked us to bump it to 20, so we've done that. At the next meeting, we'll provide you the recommendation as to who the lucky winners are for the clubs. We had it initially on this meeting, but we recognize this meeting being quite long, and we also wanted to make sure that we did a full analysis before we brought it to you. So the two major numbers that should open your eyes as council are the next two, which is the Aquatics operating grant and the Mariner Center operating grant. So as you know, you had made the motion to go to 75,000 for operations to restart the YMCA. So what this number means is this is what we're expecting operationally it will cost you in the next 12 months. And in fact, because it's only opening in September, technically the operation itself will only be 7 months. But as you know, there are operating costs that come in before you actually open the doors. So I'll say the next 12 months. And so from that perspective, the operating grant combined with the number I just talked about, which was the 145, represents about 31%, or a little bit over 31% of the presentation of numbers, the Mariners on Main that you received yesterday. Okay, so again, these numbers come with some uncertainty because we haven't established the percentage yet. I'm using 31 and change because that is approximately where we should be based on uniform assessment and population. Now, it could be a different number, obviously, but I'm presenting, what I think is worst case scenario because I don't think it's a third in this instance. So the Mariner Center operating, so that's the Aquatics operating grant. So we were expecting 75 there, and it's higher. Now I do have some good news, and the good news is that some of these additional costs, it's not the taxpayer of the municipality of Argyle that will be paying. It will be through our COVID restart funding. So that's the federal funding, our portion of that $67 million grant that the province received. I would say approximately $70,000 of these two numbers will be paid out of that account or that fund. Okay, so that's fine for this year, but then next year, if we still have COVID-related costs, we'll have a little less in the fund to use. And obviously, if we have an ongoing cost that's $100,000 a year for aquatics, then we're not going to have the COVID fund to pay for that. So it'll have to come from another place. So those are the concerns that I have around those numbers, is that we want to provide a service. We're committed to the service, but in the early game, in a fitness membership environment, those memberships aren't going to fly in right away. And we hope that they do, but we have to expect that they may not. So that's why I think the estimates that Duran presented take into account a low membership number, or lower than what they would hope. So if he does better, then that number is better.
Alain, I don't see where you've got capital, Mariner Center capital, where you were showing us on one page, it possibly could be 45, and it's not there. What's the reason that it's not there on this one?
Because it's a capital project, and we made the decision that the capital reserve should pay it rather than the current year taxpayer. So when I put things in capital reserve, what I'm basically saying is yesterday's taxpayer will pay for that. And when I put it here, it means today's taxpayer will pay for that.
Okay, right, makes sense.
Yeah, most of our capital does end up in the capital reserve. And what we end up doing is if we want the current year taxpayer to pay for it, we increase the transfer to the reserve. So if you remember, there's always 135 to 150,000 that goes in the bank. So if we want the current year taxpayer to pay for more, then what we do is we increase that number. So that's basically the bucket going in to the capital reserve bucket, and then the expense comes out of the bucket in that reserve.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. I know it's complicated, and we're trying to simplify it, but I can assure you that when we look at these projects, we always apply the lens of who should pay for this. Is it today's taxpayer? Is it yesterday's taxpayer, and why? And so we know, like in certain cases, you don't make today's taxpayer pay for everything, because if you have a surplus and you have an accumulated surplus, well, that's what that's for. It's to pay for things like that. So we try to have to find a balance.
Yep.
So the only other thing that I would raise here, two other numbers. One is the CMA 2024. You've already made this commitment. So this is just year 3. So year 1 and 2 were paid last year, all in one. And so this is year 3. You made the commitment of, let me think now, $250,000. So over the next 2 years, expect a $50,000 to come in each year. And it's coming from the operating reserve. You've already made that decision that it would come from the operating reserve, not capital operating. So we're bringing in the money from the operating reserve and we're showing the expense here. That's how we have to do it. And the last one is that I would raise is the Société Historique de Pubnico West. You had a presentation done by that organization about the archivist position, and they had it 2 days a week. We were paying 2 days a week, I think, before at $13,000. They had asked for 3 days a week, and we ended up approving 2 days a week. They asked for 3 days a week. In this budget, it assumes 3 days a week. It assumes that you're okay with that. However, you have to make that a motion because they've made a very specific request of that. So you don't have to make it now, but before the end, we should be making the motion to confirm that that's what you want to do. So what I did was, again, as a conservative budgeter, I typically put the higher number, and you can discuss whether you're supportive of that presentation. That's entirely your decision. So what you'll see is about a $72,000 increase from last year's, most of which relates to Aquatics and Mariner Center. And some of it is offset by the fact that you're only paying 1 year in CMA instead of 2 years for CMA. Congrès Mondial, CMA. So if there's questions, I'll take them. And then if not, we'll go to fire and Marcia will do that section. Again, we're not doing the whole budget. We're doing the ones that we think that just in our mind requires more highlight. If you have questions about anything else in the budget, we are here for you.
So if anybody has any questions, just speak up because I can't see. I'm not hearing anybody. So we can move on.
So with the fire portion of it, it was already discussed with the fire budget previously, but just to see it here in the budget actuals, you'll see the first line. That's what Alain was talking about, how we increase the grants to each fire department. And that increase was about 6%. With the insurance increase of over 40%, we just thought it was fair that we would increase theirs a little bit. At the very bottom of it, you will see the insurance vehicle loss. That's the one that Alain was talking about for $24,799. That is the piece that we are going to be paying for them as well. Other than that, the rest of the fire budget is almost same as last year. We did counter in a little bit of an increase for the accident, the insurance, the accident and life, just in case. That one usually only comes in January. So with everybody else's, every other insurance going up, we just put a little contingency in there, anticipating that one. There's also workers' compensation that is new, fairly late, just started half of last year. That's just paying workers' compensation on our fire trained people. So basically that is what you guys just approved, the bulk of it in our budget. If there's any questions regarding that, we'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, I don't hear anybody.
Okay, it's my turn. This one will be short. It's about the airport. So the airport, last year we would have budgeted 197. We spent slightly more than that, and that's actually just a billing error that will be adjusted in the new year. But for the purposes of this, we showed what we actually paid. And we're expecting a drop of about $23,000 in that expense. It actually could be more, but Celtic's work is underway and ongoing. So Celtic Air, we're confident, will generate some additional revenues for the airport during the next year. This number is conservative. So if they're successful in changing the prices and changing contracts on fuel, et cetera, the budget that the airport passed it was very conservative. So it didn't take into account the potential savings, because we were very cautious to guess what it would look like. So we know it'll be cheaper to run this year. It could be cheaper than that number. It probably will be, but I just want to point out that we do have almost $23,000 savings showing in that line for this year. And the airport did pass their budget last week. So this is confirmed from their end.
Questions, anybody? Okay, we can move on.
We have to go up, Alain, for some reason. Yeah, property inspection and facilities is on top before the airport.
Yeah.
It's the way
Yeah, I did.
So if you can,
Yep.
yeah. So if you can just go up 1 or 2 pages, the way the budget's set here on the agenda didn't come out quite as good. So for this year, we changed things up a little bit. If you want to go up 1 more, Alain, please. Thank you. So this year we split some of public works. Louis is now the supervisor of all maintenance and sewers. So we just kind of put it all in its own little category. So it's easier for him to budget, as well as, to keep everything separate that way. So basically here, I mean, I can't see the bottom line, but most of this budget is basically just taking out of property inspection and a little bit of recreation and putting it in its own category. So it's easier for him to manage and budget that way. So there are no significant changes. It does look different than last year, but there's not a ton of changes here. We did move some of the summer students. You're going to see, if you want to go back up for a minute, Alain. Some of the summer students are now budgeted in there, which makes it look a little bit different, but it's just moving from recreation into this facilities and water. That's all the difference that it is, and moving some of the salaries from one place to the other. The rest basically all just stays the same. So then if we move down into public works, you will see it looks like the budget's gone up for about $68,000. The main part of this is the hiring of the second building official, in anticipation of the existing building official retiring. So it does look like it's an overlap this year, which it is, but we're just basically training him. There's also a little bit of more expenditures in conference and training, which is basically him, the second building official, taking the training. So we up the budget there as well. To where Alain was before, you will see that the building official salary has decreased. That is because he is anticipating retiring prior to the full year being spent. So we just budgeted for what we're anticipating, that as long as he'll be here. So it has overlapped a little bit, but we kind of saved a little bit for some of his salary. So other than the training, the civic signage initiative has gone up a little bit. That is basically some of the fire departments pushing for civic numbers as well. So there's been some added civic numbers there. Fire inspector is a little bit higher, just we took it out of one line and put it into another. So it's not it looks like a big increase, but it's not. It's just taken from one place to the other. So that's basically the public works. We just wanted to highlight the building official salary, and if there's any questions on that one.
Marcia, just a question, will John be staying on? And although I know he's going to be done with some of his work, but he had mentioned something about maybe doing, what is it called when you subdivide land, subdivisions or something? So do you expect any expenses from him doing some work, or is he completely done from what you know?
I think for this year, what we have budgeted will be for him doing there, but after that, we're anticipating that he will be part-time. So next year, you'll probably see not quite an amount that high, but you will see an amount for him for doing part-time work.
Thank you. Great.
You're welcome.
So the transition with John is some of his work will go to Hans around development. Because we've moved responsibilities from Hans to Louis. The thing about a guy like John is he's multifaceted, he's multi-talented. And so what he actually did was building inspection, development permits, and subdivision. There's not too many people that do all three. So he's been a busy guy. And he's still interested in doing subdivision, and he's still interested in assisting Renee, our building official, in training, for sign-offs where he may not have his full sign-off ability before John retires. But the development piece is expected to transition to Hans. And so we're expecting 1 to 2 days a week for John until the end of fiscal. Like going to December, it'll be 5 days, and then January 1, it'll be 2 days a week. And then eventually, obviously, he'll look to retire fully. But we will take as much as we can get from John because, again, to the point of being multi-talented.
Alain, can he do some of that stuff at home instead of traveling? I'm just being nosy a bit.
No, it's not. No, it's an excellent question. Subdivision stuff he can do from home. 95%. The sign off on an inspection might be a little different. So there may be a time where he's really expected to come in and help Renee in the office. I don't think John minds that. I think he likes the work. He's trying to work less.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No, move on.
So I'm scrolling through sewer budgets. You've seen those already, and you've had conversation about them, and you've approved rates. So I'm not spending much time here. So this is a new section here. It's called Municipal Innovation Tri-Co Planning. So what you see here is what it looks like is we're spending $80,000 brand new this year, which is true, but we're getting about $75,000 back. So this is the, if you remember, this is the tri-county application for planning services that would occur from Digby to Shelburne. So why are we showing all these things in our budget if we're sharing everything? Well, we're running the project. So we're running the revenues will come to us. The expenses will be spent by us. We'll be billing the municipal units for their portion. The actual work to be executed will be done as a team. So I'll have a team of, I'll be included probably, but there'll be 3 or 4 of us that seek to engage, the work that needs to be done. So it isn't that all the work will land on Argyle, it's that we're actually administering the project on behalf of the units. So this is probably half of the project. We're expecting it to be 160 grand.
I don't hear anybody.
I have a question, and it pertains to what Danny said a little earlier about that insurance bill. And I should have asked it when you were in fire protection. When Danny said the fire insurance was around 121,000, or Alain said that. So when I look at the fire protection and I see the insurance of vehicle loss, I see that, but I don't see any insurance on fire protection, operational grants and support. It's probably at another place, I would think.
It is the number that you seek is included in that number there. So what we do is we give them the grant and they pay the bill.
I get you.
Yeah, so that's why that number jumped significantly this year compared to last. Like last year was 2%, this year's 6%, because we recognize that if they don't get it from us, they're going to have a hard time paying that bill. But it is still their bill, right? So that's where it's included in that number there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh. I do want to come back before we get into recreation. I do want to come back. There was a comment online or a question about the Mariner Center repair on the roof, where we talked about the Mariner Center repair on the roof. So the question that Councillor Sonia asked was in relation to an expansion of the Mariner Center. I want to clarify, we do pay for the 1/3 of the operations of the Mariner Center as it stands today. We are a 1/3 funder. So and so as part of the agreement. So I don't want to leave a message out there that suggests that we're not paying anything on the current Mariner Center. We are. It's that the Mariner Center expansion project, if there's an expansion that occurs there, that's where Councillor Sonia had a question about duplication. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So moving on to the recreation department, you'll see at the bottom, it looks like that the budget has increased by 102,459. Basically, two numbers drive this number to look so high. The first one is the day camps. Last year, we knew that the day camps were not going to be happening. Therefore, we didn't hire the day camp summer students. This year, the recreation department is hopeful that, they may be allowed to have some form of day camp. Therefore, we've budgeted for these students. So basically, if they were to shut down, I know right now I've talked to the recreation directors and they have hired 6 students so far. However, they have received funding for 6 students. So basically it's like portion of their salaries will already be paid for. So hoping that they can have the day camps, we have put it in the budget this year. The second one is, you'll see halfway down, repairs and capital projects is up almost $28,000. These are again, projects that they're hoping to have completed this year. But if you look in the revenue, as I've discussed the last meeting, they are also applied for funding for that one. So in the revenue section, you would see $22,000 that is budgeted as revenue. So they haven't heard yet if they've received this funding. So it's one of these things that, the projects will happen based on funding. So other than that, there's not a ton of, there's day camp expenses of $5,000, which last year there was none. So it's basically the day camp and these capital projects that are driving this number. However, just keep in mind that these are also numbers that receive funding as well. So it is in our revenue section as well.
I have a question on the students, if I may.
Sure.
The 52,000 more, is that like there's grants, right? They apply, they're student grants
Yes.
for those
Yeah.
from the government. So is the 50, maybe it's not, maybe it's more than 52, or 52 was the, if you want to go back to that line, where are we?
Mhm.
Right there, 78 is budgeted, but don't we get some of that back? We get some of that back from the grants, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I can go to that page, Warden, to show you what the revenues are that offset that number, if you permit me. So they're showing as revenue.
Right, okay.
A little bit higher. Right there. Nope.
So Canada Works summer students. Go ahead, Marsha.
Nope. So you'll see there's $22,000. So that's basically, last year we did sometimes it's hard because this time of year, like she doesn't know, the director doesn't know yet, you know, of all the funding. So if you see last year, we only budgeted 14,684. She ended up getting more grants than, you know, than we're hoping. We do opposite with the revenue. We kind of, you know, go under. So 22,000, she did receive word that she has funding for 6 students. So therefore she went ahead and hired 6 students. Now it's not full funding. What's the percentage, Alain, that she gets? Do you know that right offhand? I think it depends on the grant she
I think it
applies for.
depends on the grant. I think it's like up to 75%. In
Yeah.
certain cases, it might be 90, but I think it's typically 75, but I could be wrong.
So 3 of these 6 students are what we consider like office students. So it's not like day camp. If it doesn't happen, they're gonna, you know, they don't have any work for them. So one of them works in our office and helps with like office managing, because they, you know, rec department is out and about a lot in the summertime. Another one is to like plan special projects and like outdoor projects, hoping that they can do some of these events, even, you know, maybe outdoors more than, you know, if COVID was to continue and we weren't, you know, permitted to do day camps again this year.
Right. And the day camp itself generates revenue because people
Yes.
pay. So yeah.
Yep. So we have
Okay.
that. It's a little bit lower, maybe.
Did I go the wrong way?
Nope. I
No.
think you're right there. 25,000 we have budgeted.
Okay. Yeah.
So they do pay a user fee as well. Plus, so yeah, there's the teen program as well that they're hoping that maybe they can do some form of day camp for the teenagers as well. So
when you look at the expenses, you have to realize that they're not all, they're shown as expenses, but a lot of it are paid by revenue coming in for the same lines, for the same.
yes, either grants or the user
Exactly.
fees,
Or the user
basically.
fee.
Yep.
Okay, good. Thanks.
So is there any other questions? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just to compare year to year. So last year we broke even on utilizing students and operating activities. That never happens, right? So that had to do with the government being very liberal, no, small L, giving out grants. So a greater percentage of the people we hired were covered by grants. This year at 22,000, it could be higher. It's definitely 22, but it could be more. So, you know, if you look at last year's guess versus actual, you'll see that the actual is quite a bit higher. So usually what Jeanette does is she applies like crazy, and we're a very reputable, consistent and organization that reports very well. So we're, you know, we have good connections with the funders. So that's always good. And I give full marks to Jeanette for that, because she does most of that work. So this year we have a cost of 78, but we have revenues, and we have also we have grants. So if you take all the numbers and you drop it down, it'll cost about $29,000 to operate that day camp this year, assuming that we do full bore. So right now it may not be full bore. It may. So then of course that cost will diminish. That is normal. That is usually what it costs. It costs between 29 and 40, 35 per year. So we, and it's purposeful because we keep the rate down at a level where you know, people of varying income levels are able to afford to send their child to our day camps. So that's comparison to year.
There's no questions, so that's.
So just 2 numbers quickly that I want to show. One is on the last page. We're anticipating, this is a question that Councillor Guy asked about depreciation and putting money away for the future. So some of the towns, what they do is they actually set their tax rate, and they include in their tax rate the approximate cost of depreciation of their assets. And they do that because they don't want to have to increase the rate exponentially when they have to replace something. They want it to be consistent over time. So when they go to replace something, they have enough or close to enough to actually do it without having to increase the rate significantly. So we are not there, and most rurals are not there. We don't actually rate for depreciation. However, we're close. And the reason why we're close is because of the gas tax. So the gas tax kind of takes us a little bit off the hook, because we know that we're getting $342,000 a year, and that doesn't show anywhere on the operating budget itself. It goes directly into capital. So what this 150,000 represents is our attempt to get to that amortization number. And I did a really, long email about, there's amortization, and then there's what we actually expect to have to replace. So there's two different numbers there. Then there's also a consideration that we would never replace something for the full cost if we were going to get a federal provincial grant to do it. So there's you're depreciating the full cost of your asset. And if you're looking to fund the full cost, that's fine, but that may not be what you pay. Okay. Now, there's all sorts of arguments one way or another, and I'm not going to get into the philosophy of what's right and what's wrong. I think ultimately what municipalities should do, and it's part of their responsibility for the future, is that they can't just think about 12 months. Because we expect you to be around a long, long time, municipality. So we have to think about what it looks like in the future. And so we're putting aside, every year we put aside an amount. So last year we budgeted 135. We actually transferred 310, and we had an exceptionally unusual year this year because of de-transfer taxes and COVID and uncertainties. So we decided to use some of that surplus to push into capital projects, and that was done with your permission. So 150 is the number that we will be shifting this year. Ideally, we'd be at 160, but it's close enough, and we had some other costs that we're bearing this year that we want to make sure we pay for. So that's why that number is at 150. And I'll just scroll because it's just one number, you'll remember it. The other number I want to show you is the amount that we're expecting to bring in from last year's operating reserves. So that number represents money going out into your capital account. This number represents the amount that we're bringing in from your previous year's surpluses operating. So that's $160,000. That number is calculated intentionally, meaning that we have identified certain things in this budget that we expect will only happen once. So, or have already been approved to come from the reserve. So for instance, the Congrès Mondial 2024, $50,000 is included in that 160 that you see there. That's coming from, because you told us that's where you want the money to come from. The one-time cost of duplication for the building inspector is coming out of this number. We're saying, look, we're not going to do this every year. This is a succession plan for our building inspector. Therefore, we're not expecting our current taxpayer to pay for that. We're taking that from previous year's surpluses. Those are two larger examples. There are, 2 or 3 smaller examples that get you to that number. And we usually round it to make sure that it results in your budget being balanced.
So Alain, would I be right in saying, for the public that's out there looking at this, that in one sense, councils before us, then our councils, we have funded the depreciation of a building because we're building a building and money was put aside? Would that be right?
That is entirely accurate. And you could have funded the whole thing out of your reserve. You could have, because you had the money saved. But because we went out and got grants, we didn't have to spend all that money because we went out and got those grants. So that's my conversation that I typically have around funding depreciation. You never know how you're going to replace these assets. You never know who's going to actually pay for them. So there is no magical number that is correct. But
Yes,
what is correct is to give it a shot, right? Is to
right.
estimate in the best of your ability what's coming in the next 5 to 10, and are you saving enough money to do that? And you approved a resolution for asset management plan. The asset management plan will do that even better, right? Because it'll establish certain things in the order upon which they should be replaced.
Right on.
So that was a whole lot of talking.
So is that basically what you're gonna show us on the budget
On the detail, yes, and
details?
quickly go through the PowerPoint, like very fast.
Yes. Okay.
So I can flip to that if you wish, or if there are any questions.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Look at those colors.
You see that? Oh, ma. Vois-tu? C'est vert. This is in no way a representation of a political party. So, so very quickly, this document, the intention of this document is to kind of take a larger picture and say, okay, our budget went from this to this, and why? Okay, and how are we paying for these changes? So we've already talked about taxes at our initial meeting, which has been posted online, not the same day. It was later on, or will be, I should say. I'm not 100% sure if it's posted or not. But anyway, so the total operating expenditures and revenues increased $648,000 from one year to the next. Now, I'll remind council that last year our operating budget stayed the same from 2 years ago. And a lot of that was COVID, right? Because we knew we weren't going to be providing certain services, right? So if COVID didn't happen, my expectation would be that this number might be close to the same, maybe a little less, probably a little less, but it would not have jumped 648 in 12 months. You would have probably seen a 200 and a 300. You'd have seen it over 2 years, potentially. So council's being asked to increase commercial and residential tax rates in the draft budget by 2 cents to meet the sharp increases of operation. And I want to point out that the reason why we're looking at the 2 cents for both residential and commercial, there are 3 driving factors. One is police. Police contract is costing us $44,000 more this year than last year. It's a 4.9% increase, and our assessments have increased less than 2%. So that's reason one. Reason two is, I guess 2, 3, housing and education. So the 3 of those numbers, education, housing, and RCMP, have resulted in about a $90,000 to $100,000 increase in your expenses, and you haven't done anything. Those are amounts that you pay to the province. You don't actually deliver the service directly. So when we looked at the budget, we were probably $30,000 or more behind, and we hadn't spent a dime. We only looked at what the increases were in assessment were from one year to the next, keeping, assuming a stable rate was going to give us about 80,000, and we were like 110,000 in those 3 areas alone. And then we'll add a 4th one, which is fire. Fire had a sharp increase, most of which you've seen. You understand that most of it has to do with insurance, but it's not entirely insurance, but it's a good chunk. Not just insurance of property, but also insurance of people. So workers' compensation. 2 years ago, we picked up an additional $23,000 in costs for dispatch fees. So it's been sharply increasing over the past 2-3 years. So between those numbers that I've explained to you, that's $180,000 in expenses that you were not generating enough money with the current tax rate to offset. So that's the unfortunate reality. We know costs are increasing. We're seeing inflation, and unfortunately, we're not immune to that. And so that's why we're looking at the increase. So we do show what the impact will be to a typical taxpayer. And by typical, I mean somebody that has $150,000 in assessment. You know, that may not represent you as an individual, but it's an average number. So what we're seeing is that 2 cents would drive a $30 increase over 1 year versus the next. And it's approximately double that in, well, sorry, that's not true. It's about the same for commercial as well. So, so basically on an individual tax basis, it's not a lot. I think it's the idea of a tax increase that is never that attractive, especially on a big bill. So we're not unsympathetic, but we're just trying to give you the reality of our situation. So the sources of additional revenues, some of which I've already explained. The good news is that we're expecting some sharp increases in other revenues that aren't property tax related on the rate. Some of it is a tax, a deed transfer tax. So people coming in buying new properties are so when properties switch possession and when people migrate in, they do pay a 1% deed transfer tax on the value of the home or property. So we're expecting that to increase from last year. But remember, last year we set the bar really, really low because we thought nobody would move with COVID, and we saw that the opposite happened. We are expecting some increases in investment and other income compared to budget last year, but that's because we budgeted so conservatively last year because we didn't know what was going on. Conditional funding, I will mention this. This is the breakdown. There's an increase from the province of this much, 225. A good section of that is us showing the Safe Restart funding, which is a one-time grant that we've received. And also, if you recall, we talked about the municipal innovation funding for the Tri-County planning. That's the revenue side of that 80,000 expense. So that's the breakdown of your revenues. Okay. I'll stop there. If there's any questions. Some of this you've seen before, so I'm good with questions or not.
Any questions? Is there something in there on that for a new computer for you? Because your voice just disappears at times. I don't know.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't think there is. I'll have to talk to IT about that. I don't think there is. I know we got a lot of laptops for a lot of people because we got it through COVID funding, but I was not on that list.
You were on that list. Well, you should have been.
Maybe, or at least for a mic.
Yeah, for Mike. That's what they brought me because he equipped me with a mic here because
I'll ask our IT person for a new mic. How's that? I think we could handle that one. I apologize. So okay, so this just states very briefly what services will be restored. So, you know, it isn't just about money up and down. It's also about delivery of service, right? Like we saved $100,000 in recreation last year. That's fine, but we didn't have a day camp. And I can assure you, a lot of people love the day camp. So it's the service that we're trying to restore, and we're optimistic that at least partially will be restored. So this is a list of those services. Day camp again could be modified, but in this budget, it's assuming full 4 location day camp, probably restricting the amount of people that can come in, but it assumes a 4 location day camp. So obviously that may not happen based on the protocols. And the rest are listed here. And so I'm pointing out that of the $200,000 that we're investing in new services, 110 will be paid for by the Safe Restart Fund. So this is a repetition of what I started with. We did include building inspection in the increase on. So I mentioned fire, but I did not mention building inspection. Building inspection is included in that number. Why did we include policing, education, housing, fire, and building? Policing, education, and housing are considered mandatory expenses. And that's defined as we don't actually deliver the service, we pay for the service. And people tell us what we pay them. And that's it. So now mandatory service provision. So the provision of mandatory services, fire, building inspection, those are mandated services we must deliver. So there's a mandatory expense and then there's a mandatory service. So I've combined them both to show you that that investment from one year to the next increased almost $240,000. So this briefly talks about other investments that are like we always attempt to do a little bit more, a little bit new. Obviously, the strategic plan has to be. We have to plan if we're going to execute a strategic plan. We need to be able to set aside money to do that. Our hope is that if we're successful with those objectives, that one of them is generating additional revenues and communication and other things like that. So it's either an enhancement of service or an enhancement of revenue that we're hoping to achieve with this investment. And the future considerations is that we have to be mindful that there is a Mariner Center expansion project on the docket. And we know that if we're going to borrow for that, we're going to have to increase the tax rate to pay for that because we don't have that money set aside in its entirety to pay for it. So, so that's just, I think we've certainly said it in this room multiple times, but as the project unfolds, it'll be important to move this information out to the public as effectively as possible. Public is very, very interested in the Mariner Center expansion project, but it's like anything else. Like, you got to see the cost associated with that and to make an informed kind of observation on the service. So that's the end of the presentation. I hope that the color was good for Councillor Surette.
Just beautiful.
Okay, any questions on these? Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I've been marking it down a few things, and I guess a couple of times when you said any questions on it, I was too slow at unmuting myself. Ended up talking to myself a couple of times. Couple of things I've been marking down. The Claire Argyle 2024, as stakeholders as we are, just wondering if we've been hearing much correspondence or any correspondence on what is going on there. I've got different organizations asking me, and they haven't heard much. I don't know if we've heard much, really.
I don't know that we've heard that much, to be honest. Like we're not privy to like minutes of their meetings, etc. I think it's probably time for me to reach out and see how they're doing. I know that we have some staff that are probably more informed than others because they are associated with organizations that are directly associated with SEMA. So our community development officer, Charlene, is in the know, probably the most informed, if I can say that. I know that she participated in a recent meeting. So I think it's a matter of just pushing that information out a little bit more and asking Congrès Mondial to do that. So I think the silence means they're in planning mode is what I would presume. But I will ask to get an update from the committee for sure.
Thank you. And just a couple of other things. I'm really happy that we're helping out the fire departments. with insurances and extra monies there, because as we all know, due to COVID, a lot of these fire departments have fundraisers and that they could not have the past year and that. So really happy to be helping them out. And day camp, happy to hear that there's 6 students been hired, and hopefully if COVID allows, that will get to be a ongoing thing this summer, because I know often hear a lot of good remarks about Jeanette and her team and the students that are hired, and how happy they are to be with the kids and how happy the kids are to be with them. And that's so really happy about that. And Mariner Center expansion, public consultation. I was very happy to hear that, because I honestly believe for the monies that will be involved, not maybe will be involved, that we definitely have to bring it to the public and let them know what they are looking for as far as tax increases and what it's actually going to cost them. And with that, one of the nicer things I've heard through everything that was right from the lips of Alain, we expect you to be around for a long, long time as a municipality. Alain said the 13th of May, 2021. So that's good. Happy to hear that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay. Councillor Surratt?
Coming back on the Mariner Center expansion, I know there'll be a dollar figure that this municipality can afford or not afford, and that'll be determined when we find out what the project is, what the cost of the project will be. I guess that'll determine of what the increase would be in our taxes. So it's going to be very important that we don't go overboard on this project. I know we've said that we do support the Mariners on Main, and we're supporting the Mariner Center expansion. But I would like to say as long as it's affordable to this municipality, that's for sure. That's just a comment, I guess. Thank you.
Okay. Now, on the budget itself, anybody else? So are we looking for an approval of this budget tonight? Or was that just, it is? Okay.
If you're ready.
And do we need 2 motions because of the, do we need a motion for the increase? Is that correct?
I think now
Or
you
is
made
that included
last
in
meeting, but I'm not clear on whether you intended it to inform us to reset the budget or not. So I think it's not a bad idea to restate that motion, because it could be interpreted that you were telling us to reset the budget with those increases rather than actually be we're going to increase. So for in the absolute clarity, we can do that.
I think, and that's what I was wondering, because I couldn't remember if that's the actual motion we had done, or like you said, it was just informing you or directing you to recalculate the budget with those increases. So.
And Mr. Warden, for the interest of history, we'll go to this meeting and we'll see all the rates approved in the same meeting. And that's for anybody who's looking for something 5 years later, it's always useful.
Yes. So the first thing we should do probably is to have a motion for the increases, I would say. So do we have someone who's willing to make that motion? Moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by
Ted.
Councillor Boudreau. And the motion is to increase both rates, the residential and the commercial, by 2 cents.
Yeah, so the motion, I think you should do the motion separately. So perhaps the motion would be on residential first, and it should say from $1.09 to $1.11 per $1.11.
Okay, so that's what the motion will be. So we have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. So the second motion would be to do the same thing for the 2 cents increase for the commercial. And
Yes,
that would be
and
going from
227 to
7
229.
to 29. Somebody can make that
So
motion.
move.
Moved by Councillor Doctorow, seconded by Deputy Warden Albright. Any discussion on that one? And seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. So now we need a motion to approve the operating budget.
Correct. So to help you with that motion, it would sound something like this. It would be to approve the 2021-2022 operating fund budget totaling $9.125934. That's just to help Ailey and with the motion.
Okay, and that was Councillor Digdon or a question, okay, and Councillor Sonia. So we have moved by Councillor Digdon, seconded by Councillor Sonia. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing nobody coming forward, call for the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. The budget is approved. And thank you to everybody who worked on that budget. I'm sure there was a lot of work involved in that for sure. So it's getting harder and harder with less money and more expenses to come with a balance at the end for sure. It takes a lot of work to come with that. The next one is another presentation, and that's of the reserve. Did you want to go through that one there?
Warden, this will take like 28 seconds.
Okay.
Basically, this is the operating reserve, which is your operating savings account. So essentially, what's shown here is the actuals and the budget from the last 2 years. The budget 21-22, which is the last column on your right, is what we're looking to have approved. It shows an expected interest revenue of 45,000. That's on the bank. That's on the balance of the bank of the cash that's in the reserve at this time. So that's a revenue. That's an in, and the out is a number you might find familiar. So that 160,526 would have been it's an expense here, but it's a revenue in your operating fund.
Right.
Okay. So we're basically taking 160 out of this pocket and putting it into the operating fund pocket. And that's how, and that's the presentation essentially.
And do we need a motion on this one to approve this? Or no, it's just a
We do.
presentation?
No, we do require a motion to approve.
Okay. So we need someone to make that motion. I don't see hands, but I can.
I'll move. Kathy will move.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bork, seconded by Councillor. Okay.
I'll second
Councillor
that.
Surratt.
Sorry, Warden.
Any discussion or questions?
So on this motion, just for specifics, we don't have to list the numbers or anything. We just usually say we're passing the operating reserve as presented, and then it's an attachment that people can look at.
Okay, so you're all clear on that. And if there's no discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Now we go to councillors' reports. Does anybody have any reports, anything that they want to report as a councillor? Councillor, okay, I see Councillor Albright.
Thank you, Warden. I don't want to repeat anything that was on your report or really in the staff report. I've already mentioned that we met with the Eelbrook Fire Department and we've looked at another possible source of funding, but as we heard, it probably isn't going to work out. So they're looking at paring back their project so that it will fit within their budget. We've had an AA recreation presentation from the MPAL citizen survey that was done. So basically a survey was done just to see what our residents consider important for physical activity. And the number one was walking. Number two was canoeing and kayaking. So we're taking the results of that survey and figuring out how to better provide services for our residents. Let me see, budget deliberations. We had a Glenwood Park subcommittee meeting the other day as well through Zoom, just kind of as an update. And we're kind of at a standstill right now, waiting for information from DNR. So they have a list of demands that they want before we can move forward. So we're waiting for that list to know what we need to do in order to move forward on the volleyball court. And I think that is everything else. I think I've attended, everybody else has attended. So that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bork.
Thank you. Just regular meetings, the water shortage. I think I already mentioned that last meeting. And to add on to the recreation, the bike park is going to be expanded, and there are already started a community garden project. So that started. I think they're going to make 8 beds, so that will get out the community outside at the bike park. Then I attended the library audit committee, and I went to attended the NICEO and the West Pomego Sewer Committee and the East Pomego Water Utility and the budget deliberation and the joint council meeting for the Mariners on Main. So that's pretty well the meetings I attended. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillors. Okay, Councillor, I'm going to go in order I see him here. Councillor Boudreau.
Yes, I attended pretty much all the meetings that Kathy mentioned, and also I attended the Wedgeport wastewater project meeting. We're still a few short to fill the spots. Our target is like 50 sewers in Wedgeport, and I think we're around 42, 43. But after we had the meeting, I posted it on social media and I've got good feedback. So I think we're getting close to our target of 50. I just want to let you guys know and the public know that we're getting close to our target.
Good.
Thanks.
Councillor Surratt.
Yeah, like everybody else, a lot of the meetings that were mentioned. I'll just add on that was that we at the airport committee, the board we met, and the industrial commission met today with the Western Wren. We had a meeting with the board of the Western Wren, and then we had the LOC meeting after that. Very interesting. Worked on the scholarship for the students. I believe we've picked a couple of students, and we should be hearing quite shortly who it is that gets the scholarship that the municipality provides to 2 students. And we also started a Mears Hill Community Improvement Committee. We had 1 meeting so far. Thank you.
Good. Yep. Councillor Sonia.
Thank you. I pretty much attended all the meetings that were mentioned. There's only one thing I'd like to mention is the awards presented to the volunteers. It went over very well. And I have to say on record that it's a very, very great thing to give to these people. They deserve it. Job well done. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor D'Entremont, do you have anything?
Yeah. Just a minute here. Oh, I'm gone. How about that? Yeah.
Here we are.
Thank you. Yes, I guess I was just looking at other people with their hands up, but I just wanted to, I see that the grader is been in the West Pubnico area, and apparently the Great Pubnico Lake Road has been done. I have not seen it myself with my own eyes, but they tell me it's been done. And I've seen it around in the community. If anybody has any roads that haven't been done, please notify us ASAP. It's always in the springtime, it's always a big deal. And I know in every community, not just ours or mine, but in everybody's community. But it's nice to see the grader out and with nice dry weather. Hopefully it'll do the job. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Donaldson, you had your hand up.
This will be short. I attended all the committee meetings that I'm on, and like people mentioned a lot of them. And I would just like to add what Ted said. I delivered my volunteer goodie bags, but it was discouraging because it wasn't allowed in the house. It was on the step. I delivered the one for Drumlin Heights, the young student, Miss Morton, Mackenzie Morton is her name, and they were surprised that there was even a package. So it was a nice afternoon to deliver the three of them, to actually talk to real people for a change. So with that, that's about it.
Okay. Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a laugh. My fellow councillor Dontrema beat me to talking about the grader. I was talking to our MLA on that a couple of weeks ago about the grader coming down this way, and he called me back a couple of days later and said that in the next couple of weeks or so we should see it. So just proof that politicians don't always lie. And what else been going on? Been attending a few meetings. One thing, and I might be beating a dead horse, but I'd rather be beating a dead horse someday than meeting with a family coming in, and that for a person that died waiting for an ambulance down here in the Pubnicos and the Argyles. Last evening, the base was not staffed by paramedics. That was 12 hours. That went till this morning. This morning, again, the ambulance is parked in that base, not staffed. And I spoke with our MLA on this morning, also put in a call to the Minister of Health about this morning. I'm waiting back to see what they're going to tell me on this. I know we get correspondence back sometimes that from EHS and that this system is working okay in Nova Scotia, and it's made to flex, and that what they're actually saying for the people out there that don't know, it's made to take care of your busier centers and leave your rural centers and your rural areas with no ambulance service, and have to wait for an ambulance to come 30, 45 minutes or more away. I'm not the only one saying this. We've had families stating the same on TV that has lost loved ones. And I hope to God that does not have to happen in the Pubnicos and Argyles before this changes. Thank you.
Okay. Good. My report is included. There's an attachment. I don't know if anybody has any questions. Basically, it's been a busy. I've had a busy month since last meeting, but not unusual, I guess. Next one is the staff report. If you've all had a chance to look at it, I don't know if you want our CAO to highlight, to go through the highlights of it, or, okay, maybe our CAO can go over it a bit and see if anybody has any questions.
I will be brief because I know we've done a lot here today. So just a couple of updates on, so the admin building, I think you're all fairly up to date on. Everything is still within budget. We're still moving towards the end of May for substantial completion. There'll be work done on the loan once substantial completion occurs and the grants, et cetera, will be received. So that's all good. Affordable and alternative housing, we are still waiting on information. The applicant has another project on the go. So I've been in contact with that person saying, look, you know, this is where we are with this. We're just waiting for information from planners, and it's our intention to work with this applicant to make sure that what they're looking to do and what we would like to see are aligned. So so we'll do that work. I say in the coming weeks, it'll come to a conclusion. Strategic priority sessions. So we do have a document in draft. We will be setting up meetings with staff to blow that out a little bit more. And we'll have another session with Kathy Jourdain once it's towards the end of the work. I'm finding that with COVID, this is you know, wave 3, and staff has a lot on their plate right now. I don't think there's too many exceptions to that. So I'm being gentle as to when to reintroduce the strategic priorities work, because I want to make sure that people can get their work off their plate so that they're not completely overwhelmed. You know, this wave, we were better prepared for it administratively because we've done it before. But I think mentally, it does have a bit of a, everybody has taken a bit of a backward step. We see it in the community as well, that people are a bit like, wow, when is this going to end? So the end is coming. We're all very encouraged at that. And so, but we're just being mindful of its impact on people's well-being. And one of the things that we decided to do was to make sure that staff were able to take a day that would be like a mental health day if it's just too overwhelming. Sometimes working from home, working on Zoom, all sorts of different reasons why it might be overwhelming, you know, homeschooling or whatever the case may be. We want to make sure that our staff has room to breathe when they need it. So I just want to make sure council's aware that these things are happening. Excuse me. So in terms of the rural internet and fishing dispute, I am sending you correspondence as we receive it from Iris Communications. We do have a meeting tomorrow to talk about this further. I believe I believe the warden has sent us regrets for this particular meeting, but it's essentially an update. Mariner Center expansion, strategic planning, bridge to service. That's the big one. So I won't spend any time on this one because I think the presentation on Mariners on Main is probably more relevant than my words in this document, but if you want to read them, and they are there. Airport is moving along a little slower than we hoped, and that's due to COVID, and it's also due to availability of staff to actually assist Celtic in finishing, i.e. me, but it is moving again. And so other projects of note, Eelbrook Fire Department, bioheating project, Mariner Center, I believe the warden had that in his report. And then in terms of the other work from staff, it is all listed here. Hans goes into a bit more detail on the admin building. I will say that tomorrow is the last day of Caitlin Wood. She's moving on to BC, and we wish her the best. And we hope that in COVID, it's kind of crappy because we're not able to actually, you know, gather to say, you know, thank you. So we'll do what we can in the environment that we're in. But we wish her the best. She's been excellent for our organization, and we have hired well as well. So we look forward to you know, Phil Cassidy as the new person, and we say farewell, and we'll miss you too, Caitlin. I think that's the extent of it. There's one other thing I'd like to follow up on. One of our staff members was listening when Glenn had questions about Congrès Mondial. So Charlene stated that that we'll be getting a more comprehensive update from the organization in September, because that's when it's really going to ramp up. So we'll get a more comprehensive idea of where they stand in September. And yeah, so that's, I just want to say that because I had an opening.
Any questions? Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. Not so much a question as a statement concerning the fishing dispute. That's been an ongoing issue. I hope to God that there's some leadership shown in that this time around, and also that cool heads prevail, because nobody should get hurt over this, and I'm very, very scared that somebody's going to end up hurt if there's not leadership, and that from the leaders. Thank you.
Meeting tomorrow, I've sent my regrets, CAO, because I'm not going to be around. I have an appointment that I have to go to. Yeah. And as far as sending the information to council, if they can join the meeting, they just can't participate in the meeting, right? I think that's the way it is. Now, when I get the invitation, oh, maybe you sent it to maybe everybody got that. Do you? I know I got it from Chris, and when I accept it, it goes into my calendar, but then it disappears from my email list for some reason, and most of them do that. They as soon as you accept them, it moves everything to your calendar, and then the email is gone. So right down here. So anyway, if there's no questions, we can move on. If there's no other questions. And the next item.
Oh, Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. I just,
sorry.
That's all right, by all means. Just wondering, so as councillors, can we listen in on this meeting and just listen? Can we get that email? I don't believe we received that email.
No, I think it just comes to the people that are part of that group. So
yeah.
I'll find out if I can get the rest of council the link. I don't know that we've done that with this meeting yet.
No,
but
we haven't that I'm
question.
aware of. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll certainly ask the question.
Sorry, I was just going by what the warden said, that he thought we could listen in on these meetings.
Yeah, well, I thought, like I know we hadn't done it, but I know we had discussed on many of other meetings that council was invited to sit in, not as participants, but as just to listen. So I wasn't sure if this one was the same thing or not. So, and maybe like our CEO can find out, and if you can, then anybody, he can send you the information, or Chris can send the information.
And I think that would be nice, really, again, getting back to full transparency, which I know we're all about. And also I'm looking around at a lot of the counselors, and they live in fishing communities, or they're involved in one way or another in the fishery. So it might be some relative information there for them. Thank you.
One thing that happens is usually the decisions that are made are either to send letters or to communicate. And usually those letters, I think, are shared with all the counselors, though. Like anything that's sent out is shared with all the counselors. Copies of the letters that go out through Iris Communications. So anyway, yeah, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. The next is for decision. Low income property tax exemption. It's a list of how many applicants, and we have the amounts have all been approved as far as what they're allowed with their salaries and whatever. So when we get the application, if they qualify, then we give them those. So right now the amount is $17,680 from the applicants that we've had. So I guess we need a motion to approve those. Moved by Councillor Digdon, seconded by Councillor Bork. Or Councillor Brook, did you have a question? No? Any questions on that? Seeing none, we need a motion. Oh, it's been moved. Yes, I'll call for the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Getting a little tired. Contraminded, carried. National 3-digit suicide prevention hotline. Now, I received this letter, and this letter came from our MP. And what it is there was a motion in the House, and that's to set up. It's a three-digit number, like an 8. It's here somewhere is 833 or 8. Same as the 911, to make it easier for anybody who needs, so they don't have to try and remember a long phone number to get there. And what the request is, that they would like every municipal unit in the country to pass this resolution, and it's mostly for support and to make sure that government is aware that we are in favor of having that. Now, it's a 988 number, sorry. So you probably all read, or if you haven't, I can read the resolution of what they're asking. And what it says is, whereas the federal government has passed a motion to adopt 988, a national 3-digit suicide and crisis hotline, and whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for suicide prevention services by 200%, whereas existing suicide prevention hotlines require the user to remember a 10-digit number and go through directories or be placed on hold, and whereas 2022, the United States will have in place a national 998S crisis hotline, and whereas the municipality of the District of Argyll recognizes that it is a significant and important initiative to ensure critical barriers are removed to those in crisis and seeking help. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of the District of Argyll endorses this 988 crisis line initiative, and that staff be directed to send a letter indicating such support to the local MP, MLA, Federal Minister of Health, CRTC, and local area municipalities to indicate our support. So is that a motion, Councillor Dickton?
Yes, it is, that the municipality of District of Argyll endorse the 988 crisis line initiative.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Sonia. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Next one is Article C4, grants to organization, the policy. Now, we've already had the first reading on this, am I correct? And we've added a few things? Because there's still some the highlighted are the things that we had discussed. So can we approve this tonight, or is it just still for reading?
Go ahead, Ellie. You're on mute. Ellie.
Haley, you should maybe unmute.
I'm on mute. Yes, sorry. So this policy, it does incorporate the changes that you guys had requested at the last meeting. So it is on, the 7-day notice has also been given out, but it's on this agenda to discuss it further or to make a motion to pass it.
Okay, good. So what's the, okay, Councillor Stratt.
This question can be answered by, sorry about that. Should have shut that off.
We didn't understand the question.
Yeah, I know. was phoning somebody else for the question. On 4.8, and that would be district, is talking about the district community grant and the grants or organizations. It says every 2 years. I guess maybe I missed that, because grants to organization, I know that many cemeteries and all in Richard's district every year they apply, and in mine, in my district we have one cemetery that applies every year, or one church. But so the 2 years, I'm not in favor of that on the district community grant. I just want to make that clear. I didn't realize this was the plan, but I must have missed it.
Yeah, I can address that. I think if you read it, the intention is that the cemeteries could only get $500 once every 2 years from the regular grants policy. So it may not read exact. I guess that would be I think the intention of it, right? So that the community grant, you could give $500 every year for the district community grant, but that the cemetery. So we're trying to find a place where the cemeteries. I guess what I understood the last meeting was that you may want to cap how much they're actually paid. So I don't know if that was the consensus or not, but that's the reasoning behind the language, is that you can apply for an additional $500, but you're only entitled to it every second year. So
It's confusing. It's confusing.
Yeah.
I find it that somebody else can talk. Sorry, Nicole.
No, is that okay? No, I had a question of clarity around that as well, Councillor Surratt, because as I read that, I had understood that we had said that when it comes to the district community grants, they could apply every year, but every 2 years for grants to organizations. But I wasn't clear on that when I read that section. I wasn't sure, so I'm glad you asked that.
So I guess that
the one thing we have to read. Oh, sorry.
No, it's your meeting. Go ahead.
The one thing that we have to realize that this is for grants to organizations, which doesn't include our community grants. Community grants is different than that. So I saw. Yeah, were you going to say something?
Well, I think the first thing is there's definitely an issue with the wording, so we can change the wording. But I think the more important question is, what do you want to do, right? Do you actually agree with the concept or not?
Yeah.
And I think that's the first piece, right? Like, and we'll change the language to whatever you want, but we didn't have a lot of clear direction on how you want to address this. So we gave it a shot, and then we were confident that you would fix it.
Okay. Councillor Donaldson had his hand, and then Councillor Sonia. Councillor Donaldson first.
Yeah, I don't like it at all. I don't like the non-denominational part of it. I have 4. I found another one I didn't realize that on the old Greenwich Road. It's actually in my district, not Kathy's. So I have 4 of them. I don't know. I think there's some way that we can do it through the district community grants, so all councillors can give to their cemeteries on an equal basis through the district community grants instead of the grants to organizations. I know somebody listening first time are really confused what we're talking about, but yeah, I can see this causing lots of troubles with whether you're denominational or non-denominational and how many's in your community. So just we can up the amount that we're allowed to give from district community grants, or there's a way around this, but that's just too confusing in my mind. I don't know the right answer, but I don't like that.
So you're saying that, and did I get that, if I got that right, that you don't think it should be in the grants to organization at all? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And I'm the one that would benefit the most because I have 4 of them.
That's right.
But I don't think it's the fair way to do it for the whole municipality.
Right. Councillor Sonia.
Thank you, Warden. I think non-denominational is misleading because what brought this in question was the request from a group of people in Plymouth for a grant, which they've been given. So, and thank you for that. This is I guess, better described as a private cemetery rather than, it is non-denominational, but it's a private cemetery. So the question that was put to me by the people here in Plymouth was, if it falls under the same criteria as any other topic, why wouldn't it apply? And I'm just asking the question. And what the criteria they have about the cemeteries is that there's a lot of research there. In other words, if people want to find a loved one, a lost one, a war veteran, so on and so forth, it's a place where they can find these people. That it could involve mapping, record keeping, signage. There's a whole lot to it. So it's, to me, it's not so much non-denominational. It's a private cemetery, and run by nobody but private citizens who have a meeting once a year, and they look for funding. So I'm looking just for clarification as to how these are handled. I'm not fighting either way. I'm just saying, if you're going to make a decision, let's not make it because it's non-denominational, because I don't think that by itself holds any water at all. It's not run by a church, and it's run by private people, and they take pride in their cemetery. They're putting a fencing all around it. They keep it mowed, and again, it's you want to find loved ones. Some people from the States are all over come and try to find their long buried loved ones. So there's more to it than meets the eye sometimes. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
So I could speak perhaps, Mr. Warden, to the history of why non-religious. And I think there's always been a thought around, it is not, this whole church and state conversation where, oftentimes I think it's been the historical position of this council to not give directly to churches. And I think there's a lot of reasons why that would be the case. If people want to give to the church, they give to the church. They do it through charity, and they do it through going to church. The issue of cemetery is a little bit dicey. It's not quite the same. And I think when there was some legal issues associated with the Roman Catholic Episcopal Corporation, there was some concern or fear that any sort of contributions made to a cemetery fund might be accessible from a legal perspective. And I'm not going to get in the details of that because it's not our legal issue, and certainly a lot of it to me would be private and not public conversation. But I think that part of the reasoning behind, at least partially, was because of the concern, where would the money go? And I think that particular question has been answered. It's been resolved. So I think the cemetery fund is considered more of a fund of the community rather than the fund of the parish proper. So, there's nothing that would stop this council to make a decision and just say cemeteries. There's nothing that would stop this council from making that decision, in my opinion. But I wanted to talk to you about the history as to why this religious organization is overarching in this decision. So if the council wants to be able to support all cemeteries regardless, it can do that. I just want to make that clear to you. What you want to do is up to you.
Councillor Surratt.
I think, like Richard, we should just wipe out that 4.8 and leave it like we've been doing it all along. District community grants. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I actually feel about this either. It's something that was always there, and it was never really questioned much about whether we should or we shouldn't. Um, my district, I'm not sure. There might be there probably is some in some areas. I'm not sure about East Cam. There's none in my direct area right here. I'm not sure I agree with changing and including it myself either. Like I said, we can give them $500 a year, and we usually do. Uh, I know there are some expenses. Most of the work that's done there is done by volunteers. Am I correct? I mean, they don't hire someone to do anything. So I'm not sure where the expense comes in. If someone is buried there, I'm sure there's got to be a charge to have someone, if they are still burying people in those. A lot of these are not used anymore, from what I understand. They're cemeteries that have been there for years, and they don't use them. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I agree that $500, if they're mowing and whatever, can go a long ways if that's the only expense that they have. So anyway, I'm not sure that I kind of agree with Councillor Donaldson and Councillor Surratt myself. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, just to clarify, there is a historical graveyard in East Camp. There's one in Gableton. There's one in Tusket, at least one in Tusket.
Well,
so
the one
you have some, Danny.
The one in Tusket is not a private. It's the one. There's still an organization that I can't remember. Is it a Baptist? I think it's a Baptist church, and they just moved their congregation from that church to another location, but it's still their cemetery.
I don't know what it is. It's not Baptist, Church of England or something like whatever it is. Like you're talking up by Hubert's Old Reg, like across from
Oh, okay. Yes.
Seventh Day Ed. I don't know what it is, but
yeah.
Anyhow.
But anyway, I still believe that we can. I kind of agree with Councillor Surratt and Councillor Donaldson. Anybody else? Councillor Sonia.
Just to be clear, there are volunteers for this Plymouth committee on the cemetery, but they do hire to upkeep the cemetery.
Okay.
In the sense that people are still being buried there. So I just wanted to put that out there. The funding comes from the windmills and partly from the grants to community from Argyle and stuff. I guess I understand everybody's concern about opening up a can of worms, I guess. If Plymouth needed, or any cemetery wanted to do some archival work or mapping, is there funding out there for stuff like that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure where or how, but maybe there is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's possible. It depends on the nature of the request. I know that churches have received funding for similar type of work. I know that because I was employed back when I was a kid on a funding program, and so that there are some. And then of course, if you're doing it in association with our archivists locally, then you're probably getting a free service from the municipality as well.
Councillor Donaldson, you had your hand up.
Yeah. I was just going to say basically what Alan said. If there was any way to find it, would be through our our courthouse employees. They would know. And like when I named off the four volunteer run graveyards in my districts, like I never even mentioned the fifth one, which is the historical pioneers or founders graveyard that is behind the old historical church. It's not a church no more, but on the road going to Argyle Head, right there on the corner, like there's the old gravestones from the 1700s. Yeah, that's the historical one. Now I don't know how they even get funded. I know somebody goes in once a year or whatever with whippersnippers and they clean it up, but I don't know if they've ever had any formal funding unless the church, the old historical church, might put some of their funding in to help keep that up a little bit. So, but they didn't even apply for a grant this year. So I don't know if that organization's starting to slip away. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Councillor Stratt? Oh, okay.
Yes, I'd like to direct our CAO. We have to do this on a motion, and that is to remove the on 4.8, to remove the non-denominational out of there, and to go and put that people can apply for grants from grant to organization every 2 years for cemeteries, but they can also apply for district community grants of $500. So the 2 year would be for grants to organization, like Ted did with the Plymouth. So every 2 years they could come and apply for a grant organization, but our district community grants, like Richard does 3 or 4 every year, those would be on a yearly basis for those that want to apply. That's what I like to see change. At least it'll get you guys talking.
So that's a motion?
Yes,
Oh.
I'll make that a motion, but it can be changed by anybody. I just want to get the
Well,
discussion going.
Yeah,
So that's
but
a motion.
if it's a motion and it's seconded, then it's either approved or rejected so can we have a seconder to get it discussed? If we don't have a seconder, then it's not a motion.
I'll second it, but we can discuss it.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Okay. Deputy Warden, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, my concern is by leaving in the graveyards, we're having a conversation now and we're really uncertain of how many there really are out there that can apply. So if we're uncertain, we don't know what that number is. And we know that those grants to organization dollars are limited as it is right now. And once we allow it to happen, there's no taking it out. I wouldn't think. I mean, there is, but really, are we going to? Probably not. So that's kind of all I wanted to say. That's my concern over it. And I think, like Councillor Donaldson has said several times, we've addressed this through our district community grants more often than not. I think for a variety of reasons, that's why we didn't have it in our community grants, in our grants to organizations. And I understand Councillor Sonia had an application and it did fit the policy, but I think it just made us realize that our policy had to be a little bit tightened up. So those are my concerns.
Anybody else? Councillor Dickon, I see you unmuted. Yep.
Thank you. And I'd like to go along 100% with what our deputy warden just said. Also, somebody had said that some of these cemeteries were still being used, I believe. So I believe if that's the case, that's where some of these cemetery committees or whatever may have to look at perpetual care and coming up with figures that'll help them maintain these cemeteries in years to come. Thank you.
So we have a motion on the floor. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Stratt.
I'll remove out of there if it pleases the council, to what Nicole was saying, remove the grants to organizations of cemeteries. I would remove that if she consented, if she would as a seconder consent to that, and just leave it to grants to organization, grants of the $500 of district community grants.
Okay. So your first motion was to keep it in there,
But
but now you're
I-
saying to
I would-
not to keep it in there.
I would just remove that part of it from grants to organization. No, if I'm allowed.
He would like to see it just be our community grants and no
Right.
longer in grants to organizations.
Right
Is
on.
that correct? Councillor Civic?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
I would
Nicole.
agree to that. Yep.
Councillor Richardson, Donaldson. Sorry, I do that so often.
You're muted.
Good. Maybe he didn't hear me.
I believe the easy way out of this, we already have a policy for district community grants, so we don't have to leave nothing there. Just eliminate 4.8 is all that has to be done. Is that right,
I think so too.
Mr. LMUs?
Eliminate 4.8, and in the absolute abundance of clarity, you can put a sentence under district community grants that cemetery funding may only be funded through this.
Yeah, well, that's the way it's been for years.
It has, but then because there was uncertainty around the Plymouth ask, and with respect to the Plymouth Cemetery, I mean, they were entitled to ask. I think it's just, if that's what you want moving forward, then that's what we'll do. We'll take out 4.8 and we'll say cemeteries may be funded, but they can only be funded under the district community grants.
Okay.
I like that.
That's the way it always is. I'm sorry I asked you because it's the way it's been anyhow.
Yeah, exactly. It's just to confirm what we've been doing in practice, with the exception of the one that got through. Way to go, Councillor.
Yeah.
Way to go.
So really what we're doing, we're approving the policy with that section removed. Is that correct?
And an additional line under the district
Yes.
community that says the only
Okay.
place that cemeteries are funded is through the district community grant.
Okay, and that would be the motion that we're
That
dealing with right now.
that's so the motion that Guy and Nicole did, the action will be what I just described.
Right, exactly. Okay. Any more discussion? Councillor Saunier.
I almost lost my iPad. Just for clarity, I wanted to bring this topic up because I wanted clarification. And I do understand, especially to Nicole's point, as to why, if we allow this to continue, that it may open this can of worms that we're talking about in expenses. I am kind of lucky we kind of slipped the Plymouth Cemetery through the cracks of the floor, I guess. So I'll be thankful for that, but I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So are we ready for the question?
Question.
Question called for. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded. Carried. Okay. Next one is a first reading for the for REMO, Regional Emergency Management, and it's just well, it's a regional. It's basically an agreement with the new organization, and a lot of the things that are in there we're doing already. Like, so this is a first reading for the new the joint EMO between the Ymca Town Municipality and Argyle. So this is just for first reading, but we need a motion for that. Moved by Councillor Digdon, seconded by Councillor Bork. Any discussion on this? Councillor Digdon.
Thank you. And that is, again, for some of the people that are wondering out there, and I often see on Facebook, like, why can't the 3 units get along and all stuff like this? This is one, and Mr. Warden, you're on it as well with me on the committee. This is one that's come together and is working very well. And I think it's a great thing that has come together, because in a time of an emergency, we can't do it on our own, nor can the other 2 units. So we have to work as a unit on this, and it's working very well. And kudos to the people that's making the work. Thank you.
Yep. Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Carried. The next one, Mariner Center on Main Street. We had a meeting. Not every counselor, some counselor could not attend. I don't know if you've had a chance to read what the plans were and what the recommendations were, but they came and they gave us a budget for reopening, and I think from what I can say that most of the counselors that were there, or I think probably 100% of the counselors that were there, agreed that they would accept the recommendation that was given out by from the Mariner Center for the reopening. If you want more details on this, the cost was around 400. How much was it? 490, 491, I think was the, no, 400. What was the cost? I can't remember now. It's in here. Okay. Expenses, okay, there was revenue of 528. Grants and fundraiser of 57,240, and then expenses of 881, left 296. There was a 491 there in some of it. Anyway, any discussion on this, and maybe our CAO can enlighten us a little more on this.
I'm just going to share the screen on the part of the report that talks about money. This document's well done, well prepared, talks about vision, mission, and where the Mariner Center has come thus far. So this is the regular full year budget and projection. So what you'll see in the first column is that they expect, the organization expects to make 514,000, and I guess spend 509 in the first 7 months. Some of that has to do with the membership fees being, in my mind, conservatively estimated. But that being said, there's also fundraising and other revenues associated with. This number is the number that should be of direct concern of you as council. That number is essentially $320,000, which is the amount of money that the operation will require from all 3 organized municipal units in order to operate. So if you recall, we put 105,000 in the operations. That represents about 31 and change % of that number that I've highlighted. So keep in mind that this is a projection that goes 3 years. A projection is different than a budget. A projection has a lot more uncertainty associated with it. So I would say after the first 7 months, these 2 years will be reset to reflect the reality of the situation. But what they're saying is that number is going to go up in year 2. So expect it to be higher than 105 in year 2. And in year 3, come back to approximately 105. Now, I think that we can do better, but I think it's prudent for the Mariner Center to assume low numbers on fundraising and membership so that we can be prepared to pay perhaps, and I'm not going to suggest this is the worst case scenario, but I would suggest that this is on the conservative side, meaning it's on the high end for you. So when I say it's on the conservative side, I'm saying the other revenues are estimated low. So that's what this document essentially means for you. And there is a second component to this, which is the reopening costs. That's the next page. So that's your reference to 491, Warden. It's actually,
Yes, and that's what I was, that's what I was seeing. I couldn't remember that we were going to the whole budget and the whole projected budget, I guess. Yeah.
right. So this is the reopening cost. So this represents the costs that are required before we open. And so some of that has to do with repairs. Keep in mind that we had some AmeriCorps reports that said that it was in the millions of dollars that was needed in that building, but that number assumed that you were going to be in that building for 10, 15, 20 years. This number assumes that you're going to be in that building for 5.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, when you're thinking about the useful life of a building of 5 years and you have a roof to do, you think about it differently than if you know it's going to be there for 20. And that's just an example of why this number is lower. So again, this number in your capital budget, 31% and change of this number is included there. I don't know, we haven't negotiated how we split this bill. Okay, so, but this is what the plan is for the Mariners on Main. I'm not going to go through all the detail because you would have had this for probably over a week, and a good section of you had the presentation done by Duram, who is our CEO of the municipality, of the Mariners Center. So I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Yes. So this is a projection of what it would cost to operate, right? What I was referring to was just the reopening cost. So it's a plan. It's something that we have to approve for them to keep going. And like our CEO said, we don't know what the breakdown was going to be per different unit, like the percentages. But that's something that's going to have to be decided. It's going to have to be decided when we're going to have a meeting, I guess, this week. Yes, Deputy Warden.
Sorry, I just was curious, when we have that funding meeting, are we all going to make that decision together then, or do we get together before and discuss that? I just kind of was wondering about the process around that.
Well, typically what we try to do is as CAOs, we get together and have a conversation. So we've actually started down that road, but what I think we need is a little bit of political help. I think the right way to do this is to have, we do have an in-camera piece on this council, on this meeting, but I don't think we should do that tonight because there's been so much on your plate tonight. I don't think it would be inappropriate your time, so we can set another meeting where we can have that discussion. But I think we need to have the discussion as a council.
I agree.
What are you thinking, right? What are your concerns? So and that's for two reasons. One is to negotiate, but it's also to make sure your partners understand what our concerns might be.
For sure.
You know, at the meeting, what we said was, well, I think I said it, is basically, look, we're going to be in the same room on the 20th of May. And on that day, we should be raising any and all concerns that we have around percentages, around this, that, ownership, everything. Put it on the table and try to resolve it as best we can. Now, will we resolve it on the 20th? We'll resolve most things probably, but maybe not all. So we'll be that much closer to the end. Before that, we should meet in camera.
I agree. I think it would be important to have that conversation ahead of time to be prepared for that. Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Councillor Stratt.
So if it's my understanding, we should vote on this report. If we accept the report or not? Would that not be what we are planning to
Yes.
do tonight?
Yes.
Yes. The other ask that the Mariner Center has made is for a payout, like a first payment.
Yes.
If you approve this plan, you'll be allowing that to happen anyway. So we don't need a motion to say staff should pay out X, Y. We'll let them bill us and we'll pay it out.
Yes.
Because
We've already
this
approved.
plan,
Yeah.
you're approving payouts. Like,
So moved.
The 75,000 has already been approved. So it's moved,
Second,
and seconded to accept this plan as presented. Any other questions? I'll call for the question. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Correspondence. We have the NSFM, the 12-month notice letter, and that covers a number of different things that they're giving us notice, or 12-month notice on some of the increases and whatever else that's going to happen. The library's in there. We have Department of Fisheries letter to Charlene. Charlene took part in a video that they made, and I think it was mostly just acknowledgement of her contribution to that video. And Safe Restart Fund just kind of explains how you qualify and how you don't. Any questions on any of them? Counselor or Deputy Warden?
it's actually not a question on any of those, but it is a question on something else, if I
Okay.
can.
Yes.
Earlier in the meeting, our CAO said when we were looking at budget, and I know we've already approved the budget, but you said we would have to make a motion on the Société Historique. Did we do that? I didn't think.
Okay, because we did two motions. We did a motion to approve the,
It just kind of stuck with
Yes.
me right now that I don't think we made that motion.
and that would be
we
to
did not.
increase, to 3 days a week rather than 2.
Right.
so if you're agreeable to that as a council, then the motion would sound something like that you would approve the amount, which isn't the full amount that they've asked for. It's rounded to 18.
Yes.
And the other option you have is for how many years. So they've asked for, I believe they've asked for 3 years. Is it 2 or 3?
Yeah.
Two, I believe it is 2 and being reviewed after that, was it? Or 3 and being reviewed after that?
I want to make sure we get that right. So let me just.
Exactly.
So the motion should also, I would recommend a multi-year, only because like it's staff, right? I mean, they're not going to want to do that every year. So it's 2 years or it's 3. I would not recommend just doing it 1 year because it gives them too much uncertainty.
Right.
So I will just, I'll just make sure that I get what they asked for correct.
Okay. So that was a motion, Councillor Digdon?
Yes, it is, and I'm going to go with 3 years, and reason being for the Claregyle 2024. I know they're going to need some funding there, so I'd like them to know that there's like Mr. Muse was saying, for some stability in that they know that they've got this funding for 3 years.
Okay. Seconder. I see 3 hands. I saw Councillor Dottimo's first. And you had, so Councillor Dottimo seconded. Did you have a question or no? Any discussion or questions on that? Okay, call for the question. All in favor, signify by raising your hand. Contrary minded, carried. Yeah, I'm down to low battery here. Financial requests, we don't have any yet, and that's something we're going to do at the next meeting. We're all the ones that are banked now, waiting to be approved. Agenda topics for next meeting or notice of motion. Seeing none, Motion to go in camera. We have an in-camera session.
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
I just want to know on the minutes, I had asked a question about the minutes. There was one line there and I want to know before this meeting is done, what was corrected and if Ailey has done it and what the correction is. Because we approved the minutes, but I challenged that it was incorrect.
Right.
So would Ailey have that answer?
Yes, sorry, I haven't fixed the minutes yet. I usually do that the next day. But I have the correction noted on the minutes regarding churches, so I will fix that so that it says denomination and not churches.
Because I think
Not
that's
sure.
what the motion was. Back then, like at that meeting.
It is. I don't know why my screen is pink. Anyways, looks like I'm sitting in a photo room, but I'm not. Anyhow, I just have it to fix the minutes, but like I said, I usually do that the next day. So I do have it on my list.
Thank you.
Welcome.
There was a
So-
question period also, Mr. Chair. You skipped the question period.
Oh, I skipped. Okay, sorry. Was there any questions? I think our CEO has given us the questions as they came. So now we need a motion to go in camera. Moved by Councillor Surratt, seconded by Deputy Warden. All in favor? Contrary-minded? Carried.